Hello, beautiful sacred souls. Today we are going to explore why patriarchal spiritual and religious systems became anti-inward and why embodied spirituality is returning. I am Alison Batty Capps of Blossoming Heart Wellness, and today I want to explore something that feels both personal and deeply historical. Why patriarchal spiritual systems became suspicious and anti-inward exploration, and why embodied trauma-informed spirituality is now reemerging. Many of us who were raised in hierarchical or patriarchal spiritual traditions carry a subtle fear that going inward is dangerous, selfish, and spiritually wrong. Yet, when we look at early spiritual traditions, psychology, trauma research, and neuroscience, we see a very different story. So today, I want to explore how inward spirituality was practiced originally, why institutions moved away from it, and why embodied spiritual practice is returning now. So early spiritual traditions were inward and embodied. Across cultures and continents, we have seen through research that early spirituality centered on direct inner experience with the divine and with the self. We see this in early Christian mysticism, Jewish Kabbalah, Sufism in Islam, Buddhist and Taoist traditions, indigenous spiritual practices worldwide. These traditions, in their original form, emphasized contemplation, meditation, prayer as direct communion with the divine, dream work, embodied ritual, intuitive knowing, spiritual authority that was internal, not external or hierarchical. Early Christian mystics like Meister Eckhart, Teresa of Avila, John of the Cross, Hildegard von Bingen taught that God is encountered within the personal soul through direct experience, not through doctrine or external sources. Scholars of early Christianity such as Elaine Pagels, Karen King, and Bart Ehrman document that early Christian communities were diverse, experiential, and mystical, not rigidly institutional. In short, spiritual knowing originally came from within. We see through history and research that as spiritual movements grew, they became entangled with political power. When Christianity became the official religion of the Roman Empire in the 4th century, spirituality shifted from mystical experience to institutional control. From a governance perspective, inner authority posed a major problem for the government. If people trusted their own inner guidance, they are far harder to control, and they believe that made them harder to govern. We see from research that institutions gradually centralized spiritual authority, restricted interpretation of scripture, discouraged personal mystical experiences, labeled direct revelation as heretical, emphasized obedience, sin, and hierarchy. Historian Karen Armstrong documents this transition clearly in A History of God. Inward spiritual authority became framed as dangerous, prideful, heretical, even demonic. Not because it was inherently unsafe, but because it disrupted centralized power. The trauma factor, why inward work was risky. Here's an important psychological piece we rarely talk about. Early cultures had no trauma science, no nervous system understanding, and no emotional framework for regulation. When people turned inward, they often encountered unresolved trauma, suppressed emotion, fear, body memory, grief, terror. Without tools for nervous system regulation, this could lead to emotional flooding, dissociation, psychosis-like experiences, and destabilization. Modern trauma research, including work by Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, The Body Keeps the Score, Peter Levine, who created somatic experiencing, and Dr. Stephen Porges of the polyvagal theory, show us through their work that the nervous system must feel safe before any deep inward exploration can be stabilizing. So in other words, without safety, inner awareness can actually overwhelm the system. So historically, instead of developing trauma-informed methods, institutions externalize spirituality for safety and control. This is when transcendence replaced embodiment. Let's explore that more deeply. Why transcendence replaced embodiment. Transcendent spirituality emphasizes rising above emotion, detaching from the body, submission to doctrine, suppression of instinct and desire. From both a political and nervous system perspective, this created compliance, emotional suppression, dissociation, obedience, which they claim stabilized society, but at enormous psychological cost. I don't think society looks very stable to me. I don't know about you. I see trauma being inflicted systemically. So I disagree that that actually worked. However, it does mean that we are controllable. So modern trauma psychology shows now that chronic emotional suppression and bodily disconnection produce anxiety, depression, dissociation, and chronic stress. So what once seemed spiritually holy was often trauma adaptation. Why embodied spirituality is returning now. We are living in a unique historical moment. For the first time, we have trauma neuroscience, nervous system regulation tools, attachment theory, somatic psychology, mindfulness-based therapies, energetic and spiritual practices that are more shamanic in nature, polyvagal-informed healing. This allows us to explore consciousness safely. Modern research shows that safety enables integration. Embodiment enables emotional processing. Self-awareness fosters healing. So, spirituality is naturally returning to embodiment, inward listening, nervous system regulation, emotional integration, compassionate presence, not as rebellion, but as human evolution. So what does trauma-informed inward spirituality actually mean? Well, this isn't about bypassing reality. It isn't about transcending our humanity, and it isn't about denying suffering. It's about building internal safety, increasing nervous system resilience, staying present with our experience, both inward and outward, integrating emotion and sensation, cultivating compassionate awareness, and beginning to shift systemics that cause harm, holding people accountable for their unhealed wounds. Awakening is not about never being activated. It's about having the capacity to meet activation with presence, regulation, and care. This allows us to be deeper in empathy, ethical clarity, emotional intelligence, grounded compassion, and make choices that are collaborative for the common good of all, rather than only benefiting those in power. So, if a part of you was taught that going inward is dangerous, wrong, or selfish, I want to gently say that fear makes sense historically. But today, with trauma-informed tools, inward awareness becomes healing, not destabilizing. This is not a rejection of spiritual tradition. I believe this is a return to humanity, embodiment, wholeness, so we can bring our divinity into our humanity, and perhaps a remembering of what spirituality was always meant to be. If this resonates, I hope you'll consider liking, subscribing, following, or commenting. I want to build a community that feels supportive for one another. And if you'd like to learn more, I invite you to read my book, The Divine Within, Healing Ourselves to Heal the World, or go to my website, blossomingheartwellness.com, for more teachings, online courses, and to sign up for my newsletter for more things to come. Thank you for being here. I'm sending you all deep love and appreciation for who you are, no matter where you are on your journey of healing, and no matter what your beliefs are spiritually.